Alright, hi, my name is Melissa, and I'm refuting the main claim today that vegetarianism has advantageous outcomes. The advocate to this claim has two supporting claims. They are vegetarianism has advantageous outcomes on a person's health, and also that vegetarianism has advantageous effects on the environment. And I felt from the evidence that the advocate used to support these two claims didn't actually support them at all. He first starts out saying that those who practice a vegetarian diet have a lower risk of cardiovascular disease and obesity, which actually cardiovascular disease and obesity aren't only a main factor of them isn't only your diet. Numerous factors go into it. Your heredity, if your parents have had it, what your lifestyle is. And those who practice a vegetarian lifestyle, typically maybe work out more, but that's not only based on just what they eat. Additional research that I have found is that vegetarians are actually at risk of nutritional deficiencies based on only eating or cutting out meats and fish and stuff. So a key nutrient that they're deficient in is vitamin B12, and this supports the brain, nervous system, inflammation of blood. So this is a key nutrient in everyone's body. And Chris Gunner's writer in The Authority Nutrition, he says the only good food sources of B12 are animal foods like meat, fish, and eggs. And obviously, from vegetarian diets, besides eggs, meat, and fish, vegetarians don't eat that. So they're limiting their options of where they can get these key vital nutrients. Also, Chris Gunner's in the same paper says a deficiency is widespread among vegans and vegetarians who avoid these foods. In one study, a whopping 92% of vegans and 47% of vegetarians were deficient in this critical brain nutrient. And once again, he's talking about the vitamin B12. So half of the people that are vegetarians, they are missing this brain nutrient, and how can, like the advocate says, how can it be advantageous on their health if they're physically lacking nutrients? And vitamin B12 is only one example. There's numerous examples of vitamins that are solely just found in meats, like creatine and omega-3s. Additionally, Sebastian Noel, employee of Paleo Leap, says tofu, soy milk, breads, pastas, and rice, those are products that are toxic and lead to high carbohydrate loads, which could lead to chronically high insulin levels, weight gain, and diabetes in the long run. So by eating these substitute foods, tofu, soy milk, that substitute meat, they're high in carbohydrates. So how are you saying that they have a lower risk of obesity when we know that carbohydrates turns to glucose, sugar, and then fats, which then would increase the risk of obesity if that's what you're choosing to eat instead of eating meat. On his second claim, he says that vegetarianism has advantageous effects on the environment, and that's kind of a really broad claim. The whole environment, just from stop eating meat. He states that the growth of vegetables, growth of fruits and vegetables produces less waste and uses less water than producing meat. And however, this may be true, but mass producing of wheats and vegetables actually which is modern farming, actually destroys topsoil on land, which then the nutrients are taken away from the land and that can't be used. So although there's less water and less waste, land physically can't be used after it's completely demolished after harvesting wheat. Nick Collins, writes in the UK newspaper, The Telegraph, he says, a study from Cranfield University commissioned by WWF, the environmental group, found a substantial number of meat substitutes such as soy, chickpeas, and lentils were more harmful to the environment because they were imported into Britain from overseas. So these substitutes that vegetarians are using instead of eating meat, which can be locally found, they're having to ship it in, which is causing more fossil fuels. It's producing more emissions in our environment. Grass feeding does not require fossil fuels. You don't have to ship it in. There's a lot more locally grown stuff than those of chickpeas and tofus. In conclusion, I would like to say that based on the advocate, what he has said, his two supporting claims, they don't actually he doesn't give enough evidence to even prove that these supporting claims are true, which makes me disbelieve that his main claim is true. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. I'm going to give you very brief comments.
Okay.
All right. Don't stand over me, though. Don't do that, because that's just creepy. All right. Signposts are good. I think your citation of evidence is pretty good. You don't really clash with the advocate's evidence or arguments. In fact, there's a very general response to the cardiovascular disease, obesity issue with an assertion that says that they're affected by other things like genetics. And then you basically have a counterclaim on the deficiencies of vitamins, which I think is a good argument to have, but I do think that you need to develop that other argument a lot more. And, I'm not sure how damaging the deficiencies in these vitamins are compared to cardiovascular disease and obesity. Because if they're arguing that CVD is causing 400,000 deaths a year, for instance, around the world, I don't know that my B12 deficiency is having that same kind of impact. And so if I had to weigh those two, I wouldn't have any ability to make a comparison based on the argument that you presented so far. I thought that the one statistical information that you did have, though, suggested that there is a strong relationship between those deficiencies and being a vegan or a vegetarian, and that they're likely to have those particular issues. Now what we need is some more information about what the harms are on that. On the second issue, you signposted it pretty well. I think basically the argument comes down to if you are relying on substitute materials to replace the proteins and other things that people are eating, that means that they have to be imported for some countries, and as a consequence there's an environmental footprint or so that goes along with that. I don't know what the advocate's argument was, whether they ever quantified what the impact is on these productions of meat and all those sorts of things. You have kind of a generic response to it. I think it's a pretty reasonable argument to make, but I don't, because I didn't hear their argument recently, and because you don't really highlight what the quantification was or whether or not they provided any quantification, it's again a little bit hard to compare. I think you've got a good counterclaim here, and that's much more direct on the argument that was being presented by the advocate. And of course, it's very nicely presented. Thank you. All right, like I said, I got to keep it short here. All right.
That was short.
Yeah. You should have heard some of the ones I was given
oh no.
to people for their presentations.